Hi, welcome to the podcast Discovering Creativity. I'm Nicole Cisneros, and I'll be interviewing John Frederick. So, do you want to introduce yourself or tell something about yourself before we start?
Well, I don't know how much introduction you want me to give, but my name is John Frederick. I'm coming from Williamsville, New York, which is right outside of Buffalo, New York. And I'm happy to be part of the interview and the podcast.
Hey, hi, John. I'm so glad that you were able to make it. I just want to say hello.
Okay. Hi, Doctor.
And I'm back to Nicole. Nicole will take from here. And I'm going back to my class because I have a class now. All right. Take care.
Yeah, we start next week here. Yeah.
All right.
Louise, do you want to start over or do you want that in there?
I don't know. I guess I can just continue.
If he's a podcaster, he can edit.
Yeah, so I guess I'll just continue. We'll see what happens.
Okay.
So I'll go ahead and ask the first question. So how did the idea to create the leadership and innovation programs start?
It's interesting because it all started with a phone call. I was at Buffalo State College and I ran a leadership development program there. And I had gone through the creative studies department. I was interestingly an experimental student for the creative studies project with Sid Parnes way back in 1970. I was trying to figure out how many years ago that was, a long time ago. So anyway, I got this phone call from Marcia Jackson, who I was at, like I said, Buffalo State. She was at Damon at that time College, now Damon University. And she said, there's a new position opening up that sounds perfect for you. And I interviewed for the position and I was selected to be the executive director of the Center for Leadership at the Damon College at the time.
Okay. So is that why you chose to start the program? Because the call, or is there like a...
Yeah, it was that phone call. Yeah.
Okay.
And interestingly, when I interviewed and was offered the position, I went in to meet with the vice president and the dean at the time. And this was in, I think it was either beginning or end of June of that year. And found out that they had this plan to start the program in September. So there were no courses being offered yet. And they had the names of 12 courses without the syllabi. And they said, here you go. And
gosh.
Between, sometime in June or July and September, to begin to offer, and again, it's a unique design, which I think is great. The students take one course at a time. So it's, in some programs, you're taking 2, 3, 4 undergraduate, 5 courses at a time. In this program, it was designed for only graduate students. And at the time, those who have had 3 or more years in a leadership position. So the intent was not to get someone in who's had some experience that they could reflect on in class related to leadership. So we did that, and the first cohort was small. I think it was 8 or 9 students for that September. And at that time, which has changed over the years, but at that time, we would meet for 5 weeks. So we would cover a full graduate course in 5 weeks. And we would meet Fridays and Saturdays. The beginning cohort, if you have any questions, I know this is a big story. You can.
Yeah, I know, it's okay.
That first cohort was a combination of Damon students, but also there was a group of students that came from the the Ford Motor Company has a plant in town. So the vice president had a connection with Ford, and so he had recruited, I think, 5 or 6 students from Ford to join the program. However, those students worked on Fridays. So they couldn't attend the Friday evening class because the automotive plant runs, 24/7. So these students were working Friday evenings. So what I would do in the beginning is drive down to the Ford plant in the morning, teach the Ford students the Friday curriculum, come back to Damon and have our Damon students at Friday evening and teach them the same thing I had just taught the Ford students. And then we'd all get together on Saturday. So it was that nice mix of the Damon students and the Ford students. Ford students had a ton of experience. There were assembly line workers, there were union reps. It was a really nice mix of students. And there are a number of stories I could tell you. So let me know where you want to go from there.
Okay, well, I do have another question based off what you just said. So then what do you think was the biggest challenge to have to overcome through all this?
Well, in the beginning, it was the whole transportation thing. However, another challenge arose, which is kind of the continuation of the story. I'm going to tell you 2 pieces here. We might use this whole 45 minutes. What was nice about the Ford students, like I said, we had a union rep, a line worker. So they really were from various pieces of the Ford company. And if you're familiar with unions, they're pretty strict on what they do.
Yeah.
But what we're finding is as we began to study leadership and understand how collaboration and cooperation works, the students were encouraging their fellow students kind of to work harder and to do things more efficiently, even though it wasn't necessarily the union way. So they were pushing the boundaries of unionism in the name of efficiency and taking on, I had some notes here. I probably won't even look at them, but early on, we make the distinction between a capital L leader, somebody who has the title and the position, and a small L leader who just takes on a leadership role, maybe without the title or the position. So these were people within Ford, small L leaders primarily, who were pushing back against some of the unions because they saw ways they could be more effective. So they were becoming leaders in their own way. So it was really encouraging and this was because the rest of the story is coming. This was in the first 2 or 3 weeks of a 5-week course.
Oh, wow. So
the rest of the story is as we got toward the end of that first course, part of the deal was, as a large company usually does, they would pay the tuition of the Ford students. So I was just on the academic end. I wasn't the finance people at the college. I thought all of that was taken care of. And come to find out that as we got to the end of that first course, the local Ford plant hadn't gotten approval from Detroit, where the headquarters was, to pay for it. So the students were faced with not getting guaranteed payment. They were going to have to pay out of their own pockets rather than have the tuition covered by Ford. And Damon is and was a private school, so the tuition is a little higher than it would be at a state school. So we had all but one of those students decide they were going to drop out and or wait until they got approval for the funding. We had one student that continued, I think, for one more course. However, the funding never came. So here I am with a brand new program, and we went from 8 or 9, 10 students down to 4. So I've only got 4 students that were local from the Buffalo community to continue on. But we did, and I still stay in touch with some of those early students.
That's really nice, actually, and that's wow. That's not what I expected when I asked you this question. Where was going to go? Okay. So I guess I can ask you the next question now.
Sure.
That sounds good. Okay. So what makes, I guess, Damon University or College Leadership and Innovation approach different from other schools and university programs?
And I did think about that. I read the questions. And it would remind me of a time when I would interview students in Buffalo, Western New York. There is, we had, I think one just went under, but we have 8 or 9 colleges and universities. So that it's highly competitive. And so when I would interview students, I would interview each student who applied for the program. I would try to explain how the Damon program was different than typically the 2 competing programs were MBAs, Masters of Business Administration, or as Hector would know, the Buffalo State College Creative Studies Department program. And so I would say the MBA, it's all about the B. It's all about the business. You're going to learn about business, and you're going to be well versed in business if you get an MBA. The Buffalo State College is really about the C. It's all about creativity. It's really focused on the early work of Sid Parnes, one of my mentors, and the creative problem solving process. I don't know if Hector introduces any of that into the courses there, but I say what's the distinction about the Damon program? It's all about you. It's about you and your creativity and making the most of your assets, your ability within your given situation. So it really was, it's hands-on from day one. We talk about using what we're studying and coming back and sharing those stories. Oh, another piece that I didn't mention, we take that one course, we finish the 5 weeks. Now we do it at 8-week increments, but you're with the same group of students essentially for the whole 2 years of the program. So you really get to know each other. And I think as you become more comfortable, you're more likely to open up and challenge each other. And you know each other's context, because we always say there's a level of confidentiality in the program. So we want you to be able to talk honest about what's going on in your organization. And, at Ford, we had to cover that because everybody knows everybody. But we do have that sharing. So there's a relationship that's developed with the sense of I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, it's a cohort base. So you stay with that group, and we call it the cohort as you go through the program. Okay.
Sounds good. I like that. That's not something that I have here. We don't have a cohort for us. So that's different. Actually sounds nice. All right. I'm going to go forward and continue. So are there any plans to extend the program and degree options, locations, schools, or do you foresee having any future expenses or changes?
We've had a number of changes within the program I can talk about. As I said, that first group was very small. And so then we just did regular recruitment. And I think in the second or third cohort, we had a nurse. Because I can mention, we had 3 areas of, I think it was just 3 at the time, you could get your master's in the leadership program with a focus. So we had a focus in business, not-for-profits, or health. And so depending on which one you choose, there are certain courses that take a different slant. They apply leadership and creativity into those areas of the businesses, healthcare, or not-for-profits. So we had a nurse who was in the healthcare specialization. So I went to our chair of the nursing department, who was a very sharp woman, Mary Lou Russin, and I said, Mary Lou, how can we get more nurses into the program? Because this student was outstanding. She had good experience. She was smart. She interacted well. She brought other people out. She was just wonderful to have in the class. So I said, Mary Lou, how can we get more nurses in the program? And she goes, how about this? And this is what she did. Let's start a nursing master program in leadership and creativity. So, and she did. So now the nurses that we still have nurses and always had nurses. In fact, they're some of our strongest students because we have Damon is a very healthcare focused program, a lot of nursing, PA, and PT programs. And so we did continue to bring in a number of nurses, either through the leadership nursing specialization or a nursing student who was taking, I think out of the 12 courses in the leadership program, they would take 9 of them. And then they would take their thesis and a nursing specialization course from the nursing department. So it was a really nice mix. So that's been the main partnership. Since then, and maybe through some of that, we had a short-lived partnership with Hunt Real Estate, believe it or not. The board of trustees of the college gets people from the community, and it was Peter Hunt who run the company. And so he was able to enroll a number of his students into, I think they took in the beginning 2 courses. They took 2 of the courses, and then it expanded. At some point, they, I think, ended up taking 4 courses. So that helped the enrollment. Early on, like I said, we were down to that handful of students. So we got some of those Hunt students in, and that helped us survive. Because just like any business, a college, there's the bottom line. You've got to be able to pay the bills. So that kept us going for a while. And then what we did, we established, I think it was through one of the nurses. I don't remember which side of she was in the leadership side or the nursing side, matched us up with one of the local health institutions, Kaleida Health. So for a number of years, we would have a cohort of students who would take, again, those 2 or 3 courses, the intro courses, sponsored and paid for by the Kaleida Health system. So that really helped us. Again, it helped to get the word out. And then what we found is a number of those students would continue. They would finish the program. So we'd get the full benefit of their tuition dollars. And currently we're doing a couple of things. We have a certificate program. So you don't have to do all the work. And some people just find the whole thesis thing overwhelming. So we have a certificate where you can just take so many of the academic courses. And then we're in the process, and I think this is public, I think it's been finalized, an arrangement with the United Way, the social service community agency, so that any member of the United Way, any of the association members get a discount, so they can come in at a significant discount. Because we do have that connection to healthcare and social services. So those are big. And the other one other little addition here in terms of expanding the program, along the way, we would offer a discount, or I think it was close to free tuition for students who are working at Daemen College University. So they can come in and have an inexpensive degree. Since many of them who took advantage of that were working in admissions or student activities, student affairs work, we applied and got approved from the state to offer a specialization in higher ed. So then we have business, not-for-profit, healthcare, and higher ed specializations.
That's cool. I have a question I was thinking of. What exactly do you do, I guess, with the nursing leadership? Like what direction does that help them?
Oh, it's because they're very good nurses. They have all the medical training in the world. And because they become good nurses, they get promoted to nurse leader. No clue about leadership, and typically it's only what they've seen done to them. Oftentimes, I don't know if this is good to, I don't know how many nurses will say this, but it was like as a new nurse coming in, their line was, nurses eat their young. So for some reason, the experienced nurses weren't as kind and compassionate to the new nurses. So there is that whole negative energy there. And then your medical stuff, the technical parts of nursing, but you don't know leadership, and you're put into a nurse leadership role or a nurse manager role. And so they were finding that very helpful in terms of how to handle groups or how to, negotiate with someone who, might be bumping heads with you or something. So they found that very helpful.
Thank you. That makes things a little more clear as to like what direction and how that like helps.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. If you're done answering that question, I can go ahead and go to the next one.
Okay.
So what inspired you to focus on leadership and innovation in your career or the program?
This is one where it's funny, and I was almost going to try to find it because I have a picture of it somewhere. I would say it started with a postcard. So as a high school senior, I had applied to a couple colleges. I was living in another part of New York State, and I got accepted into Buffalo State College. And once I said I was going to go there, I got this postcard saying, "Would you like to be part of this?" It's an experiment. I guess it was an experiment in terms of teaching creativity. And so this was, I don't know how many, I think they recruited like 400 or 500 students, and they split them into two groups, the control group and the experimental group. And I was lucky enough to be in the experimental group, which meant I got 4 semesters of creativity training. And then all along the way, they would test, they'd give us the creativity tests that you may be familiar with, and to see how we compared to the students who were in the control group. So once I got hooked on that, I continued on in the creative studies department over at Buffalo State, and then went through those 4 courses, and I continued to take independent studies and other courses through the department. Although at that time there wasn't the master's degree in creative studies, which now there is. And so I tended to focus on leadership in higher ed. So I got my master's degree in higher ed administration and leadership. So it all started with that postcard. And then while I was at Buffalo State, and I was there for 20 years or so, I would teach in the creative studies department. And I, like I said, was running that leadership center as part of student affairs. So I had that nice academic and student affairs, bringing academic creativity and, mostly working with student organizations, but sometimes with some faculty groups on leadership. So it was a nice combination that I was able to bring to Daemen College.
That's good. So if you didn't get that postcard, where do you think you'd be right now?
I don't know. I was a child of the 60s. And like I said, I started college in 1970. So my big goal was to save the world. We were very optimistic and whatever you want to say back then. So I really thought a way to do that was possibly being a lawyer. But to be, in retrospect, I think being an educator is a much more effective and functional way to help make a positive impact in the world. So I think I made the right choice there.
I agree with you there, definitely. Okay, so the next question, how did the John S. Frederick Creative Leadership Fund get created, and what importance does it hold for you in the program?
Well, it got created. I'm about 4 years now into semi-retirement. So I'm no longer the executive director. I am just an adjunct faculty member. And I was able to hire one of the faculty who was teaching with me while I was still there full-time to now be the director of the program. And she is the one, Christina Coyle, is the one who set up that fund. And essentially, it was to, I don't know, I always feel like it's funny to have a fund in your name while you're still alive. Usually it's like one of those.
I actually originally thought that you had passed away when I saw that. And then as I did a little bit more research, I was like, oh, wait, no, he's still alive. Okay, definitely want to ask about this.
I agree with you. I thought that was a little funny. But I go and we have an award at that, some kind of an award in the fund. But the fund was to allow for outreach, training, and activities for the students, faculty, and staff. So that's used for doing community events, for supporting some of the work the students are doing. So it really is, with the college, and the budgets over the last 4 years become even more tight, but they're very strict on what you can spend your money on. So this is more general in terms of now, whatever Christina decides is in best interest of the program, she has a little money to help with that.
That's good. I like that. Is it important to you? Do you like the fund? Like, what do you think about it? Other than that, it was weird that it was great.
It was weird. I think it's great because it's, it's a way, it's an honor for people to donate. I tend to donate a little bit each year as well. But it's those students who I've had the relationship with. It's probably harder because currently, as like I said, it's 4 years. I've been just doing some part-time work. In the beginning, I would teach for years 1 and 2, I would teach 2, 3, or 4 courses. Then it was down to 2, and now I'm going to just do 1, maybe half of 1. But I like staying involved. It's great. And so like we're having an award ceremony coming up in the fall for the whole college, and I think they might be giving out 6 or 7 college-wide awards, and 2 of those are going to students from the leadership program.
Oh wow,
so
that's amazing.
The students are really making a difference in the community. It's great. It is great to see.
So next question then. So can you share some recent success stories of students or alums who benefited from this program? And you just kind of said 2 of them right now with the ceremony coming up.
I should try to remember their names. One is, a woman who started, I didn't write it down. A woman who started a community outreach program. And there's one woman who was actually a Damon College employee in the student affairs area, but she was a graduate of the program and even taught in the program. So I know she was. And the other one was, I think it was, I'll have to remember. There's one that started a community group. The other is there are a couple of nurse leaders. They've gone on to be chief executive officers. They started out as maybe a nurse manager, nurse leader, and they got up to chief executive officer. They've been recognized by the program and the college. And then we have a woman who works in the Police Athletic League. It's a league that helps kids, mostly in the community, through recreation and other outreach. But she's in charge of that program. And then there was one who was now chair of the United Way. It's that fundraising community group, organ for the whole community that I talked about. We're starting that partnership with, but she's now in charge of that program. A number of nurse leaders, and the current one. This is a funny one, because he's still working on his thesis, which I think is going to be a podcast. He's worked his master's thesis into a podcast, which is kind of interesting. But he's currently the mayor of Buffalo. The mayor of Buffalo chose to come through the program, and will be graduating as soon as he gets his podcast thing put together. So that's kind of fun. I
was not expecting that. Wow, interesting. Yeah. How does it feel to know that he's the mayor and part of the program? I know. Well,
it's another interesting story. When I was at Buffalo State College before coming to Damon, he's probably, 10 years younger than me, maybe 12. And he was in student government. He was like the treasurer of student government, and I was the advisor to student government. So our relationship goes way back to that era. And now, it's Mr. Mayor. But he was great because he was in that first class that I teach with Christina. And he was very down to earth. He told all the students, call me Byron. And he was just his full participant, other than he had a driver come pick him up and take him home and all that. But yeah, it was great. It's been nice. We've had a variety of people in the program taking some courses. Some that have graduated and some have taught that have gone on. It's been a nice connection. It really is. Been cool.
Okay. I guess I can go ahead and ask the next question. So what do you define as effective leadership, and how does your definition influence the program and your leadership skills or life?
That is a good question, because like I mentioned earlier, about the capital L and small L leadership. So I do think that is key to it. And that the other, I don't know if it's just a saying or approach, is that effective leaders create other leaders. And it almost goes along the line of when I did my doctoral work, it was on leadership, developing a leadership course curriculum. And so as part of that, I did a lot of, you can imagine all the research. But one of the models that I was attracted to and will still introduce that in the program is the situational leadership model. And so I think one of the tenets of situational leadership, again, effective leaders create other leaders. And you go from, starting where you're giving them a little more direction, having a little input, they're, taking on more of a role with a little support. But then if you've done a good job with your team, if someone came in as you were doing a work group or working a work session, you wouldn't know who the leader was, because everyone would step up as appropriate and take on the leadership role. And the leader with the title wouldn't say, when it was all said and done, that I did it. They take the credit. It was that sense of shared cooperative leadership and then shared recognition as you go through. So I think that is effective leadership to me, is not getting the job done as much as developing those people around you to be small L leaders per se in their aspect of the organization. In fact, one of the faculty members and I used to have a big discussion about the difference between leadership and management. And it's like, managers are working at managing, whereas leaders look at the development of managing the process and the system, where leaders look at working through the people, more focused on the people in the system. And you got to get the job done. You got to pay the bills. You got to watch the bottom line. But it's more about relationships to me.
I like that answer. Okay.
Thank you very much.
So how do you think, I guess, leadership has affected your life, or what roles has it played in that?
You hope. I'm at that point. Well, I know that the combination of creativity and leadership has impacted my life, particularly in encouraging my kids, I have two, to be open to both creativity, kind of in what ways might we approach, but also to looking into taking either that lead leadership role or a supportive leadership role. And so I think that, although it's harder with kids, because now I have grandkids now who were here, and they left pretty much when I got on the call. And it's so much different because for them, you see it differently. And you really want to encourage them to develop themselves, because I think that's where it starts. If you're going to be an effective leader, you have to do that self-development, self-awareness piece before you can expand beyond. And so it's just being part of the grandkids' lives have been probably the most rewarding and not as challenging as raising my own kids, probably, but the most rewarding aspect of, in little ways, trying to see and encourage their taking on leadership roles.
Okay, that's good. I like that you're trying to build little leaders for the future.
Yeah, exactly.
Your legacy. That's good. Okay. So next question: in what ways does creative thinking help leaders become more effective then?
It's without a doubt that ability to take a step back and to do differentiated thinking. To come up with what's going on, what's the challenge here, and then what are all the ways in which we can. So it's being able to do the divergent before the convergent thinking.
Okay. And my last question for you is then, in what ways can creative leaders empower followers to be creative?
Well, and that, what I said earlier, it's not only to be creative, but to be small L leaders. And I think it's setting the tone, not being judgmental, If something is suggested that you have your doubts about, be open-minded, and that's an idea. It's an idea. You don't have to say good idea, but it's an idea, even if, yeah. So it's just allowing them to free flow in terms of their contributions, and then working with them to tweak, develop, or I think or tweak and develop anything that, what's good about it, in what ways might we, and what are the challenges.
Okay. And I got a little follow-up question.
Sure.
Can you put a scenario to what like a big L and a small L like interaction or like would be, I guess? Like what roles they would have?
Well, it would be kind of the big L would be if you're the chairman of a work group or a committee. That's obviously you've got the responsibility and the title. The small L might be the newly hired contributor to the organization who comes in with experience that is different than the organization they were just hired into, and seeing the world a little differently. Small L leadership would take the risk, because you don't know how the big L guy's going to, or woman, hopefully more women nowadays, is going to respond to offering something that might be a little bit different than where he or she is going. So it's willing to tweak and push back a little bit in a way that's open and is not confrontational by any means, but it's, what if, in what ways might we? That kind of open-ended approach, thinking differently in a new